In the middle of a forest, a guy is lost, wondering where he is, until he trips over a tree root and falls hard to the ground. When he gets up, he notices a lake in front of him, and as soon as he goes to its edge, he is intrigued by the type of clothes he is wearing when he sees his own reflection in the water. Next, he notices a creature approaching the lake, and, upon observing the creature and the place more carefully, he concludes that there is no mistake, and that he knows the place somehow, since he knows there is not the slightest possibility that he is mistaken. Then, out of nowhere, a fairy appears, welcoming him and informing him that this is the world of Last. This world is the best-selling survival game of all time, where the world is full of monsters and players gather resources, build bases, and try to survive alongside their allies. With strategic freedom, detailed NPC creation, and carefully calculated game balance. In addition, the game goes through repeated events and updates, showing new developments each time. A game worthy of being the best-selling in the world. The MC takes pride in this. This is Kamiya Sushi, the final developer, who continues doing his work while also having a lot on his plate until he finishes the final adjustments and sees that the game has been fully successfully updated to version 3.0. Sushi breathes a sigh of relief and thinks that with this version, he believes Last will reach an important milestone, since with the implementation of the base level 100 once achieved, the ending of this season's story will be unlocked. He then sends a message informing that version 3.0 has been released. Sushi keeps in mind that this is obviously not the end, as he is already planning the next season, and that even though 5 years have passed since development began, and 3 years since launch, he is still full of ideas, since he is absolutely certain that this game will become even more interesting. A few minutes later, while he returns to work, someone appears asking whether the MC is already finishing up. The MC asks whether Onohara is already there. He laughs and replies that yes, because version 3.0 is finally live, then makes it clear that it was obvious he would fly straight over. This is Onohara Wataru, the guy who handles business and licensing, who then congratulates Sushi since he practically developed almost the entire game by himself, and who, in turn, says that he outsourced the background music and some designs. Wataru emphasizes that even so, he thinks it would normally be impossible for someone to develop a game of such scale alone. Sushi emphasizes that the game only reached its current scale because Wataru made it big, and that, unlike him, who is only interested in creating, Wataru supported him as a producer. The MC keeps in mind that he met Onohara Wataru in high school because their roll numbers were right next to each other, and that one day he saw his game before it was released and even gave up going to college to offer to produce it. Wataru makes it clear to his friend that his game is truly incredible, and that if it does not sell, he is sure the world is the one that is wrong, especially since the recent user satisfaction survey actually gave the game an extremely high score of 98 out of a maximum of 100. Sushi is intrigued by this score, since it was 2 points short of the maximum. But Wataru tries to cheer his friend up, saying that this is impossible because he thinks there is no game that pleases everyone. But the MC becomes even more excited and says that just by responding to the survey, users show interest at least once, so he thinks it should be possible to make them find it fun. Wataru takes a deep breath and before leaving, wishes his friend good luck with the game's launch. Then he remembers something and asks the MC if he has already signed the previous documents. Sushi replies that yes, and says they are on the desk behind him and that there was not much in the documents, so he will leave the details to him. Wataru takes the documents and, while reviewing each one, laughs and thanks the MC for trusting him. At that moment, a few more people enter the room. Sushi looks back, and Wataru picks up one of the signed documents and, with a very bizarre expression, comments that Sushi has fulfilled his purpose. The MC is confused and soon wants to know what Wataru means by that. He replies that Sushi is truly indifferent to everything except making games. Having said that, he reveals that this is why he managed to steal all the rights to the game Last from the MC. Sushi does not understand and asks what Wataru is talking about, since Last is the game he created, and besides, his friend needs him for future operations. Wataru explains that with the implementation of the base level 100, Last is complete as a game, and that, from a commercial point of view, no additional updates will be necessary. The MC cannot believe this, and lunges at Wataru, wanting to know what he knows about it. However, he is quickly knocked down by one of Wataru's guards. Sushi begins to tremble with rage, unable to believe that his idea is being stolen. Then, Wataru says that he knew the MC would not listen to him quietly, and that, because of that, he thinks bringing guards along was the right decision. Having said that, he emphasizes that Sushi's abnormal obsession with last was getting in the way. Wataru comments that his friend kept repeating updates that did not lead the game directly to profit, and that, since his supervision is very strict, they could not even release products properly. And now that the game is complete, the profits of last will be maximized without him. Sushi comments that if he had consulted him, things could have been different. Wataru does not like hearing this, and makes it clear that the MC would not have listened anyway, since division of labor means not interfering in each other's territory. At that moment, the guard releases the MC, and Wataru tells him to leave immediately, since the contract states that Sushi must also vacate the room he is in. After that, the MC reflects that this was how he lost all authority over his game. He tried to file a lawsuit, but the outlook was bleak. And moreover, Wataru skillfully gained the support of public opinion, creating an atmosphere in which people believed that last should belong to him. Sushi becomes furious and punches the table, because he knows that at this rate, all his effort will go down the drain. Then he hears a message arriving on his computer. When he opens his email, he wonders what it is, and whether it might be from Wataru. In the message, someone comments that if the MC likes the game last that much, they think he should stay in the game world forever. Sushi is confused and begins to question what that means. Suddenly, his computer starts to emit an intense glow, and he is pulled into the computer. Now, back to where he left off, Sushi is standing before the little fairy who welcomed him. She smiles and explains that the rules of the world are simple. He needs to gather resources, strengthen his base, face enemies, and survive. Sushi is intrigued to hear about enemies and thinks about the creatures of that world. Thus, he reflects that if this is the world of last, his clothes represent a character from the free trial version, and that he has extremely low stats, with no aptitude for skills or equipment, since after experiencing the game's flow once, he knows he is the weakest character, programmed to be eliminated in the first monster attack. Then the little fairy calls the MC and says that they will begin the game, which surprises him, since apparently things are moving faster than he imagined. And as he follows her, he fears that at this pace, he will be eliminated in the attack that will happen that night. And after walking for a while, the little fairy once again asks for the game to begin, but emphasizes that first, the MC must inform his name. A system screen appears before him to enter the character name. Sushi thinks that it is exactly as he imagined, that this is indeed the world of Last, the game he created. Therefore, he begins typing some characters and thinks that, in the game, he can enter developer mode using the hidden code he typed. The little fairy is startled by the name he entered and screams, wanting to know what he is doing, and then becomes surprised when several system screens appear around them. Sushi comments that apparently it worked, and that his code seems to still be active. The fairy wants to know how he knew how to access developer mode. The MC explains that he is the one who developed the game, and that his name is Sushi Kamiya, which leaves the little fairy unable to believe that she is standing before her creator, and she asks if this is really serious. He answers yes, and calls the little fairy by the name Leafy. She is a forest fairy who protects nature, believing that human activity is also part of nature, and she gives various pieces of advice to people who visit the forest. After a few minutes, while they walk through the area, Sushi asks if this really is the world of Last. Leafy replies that yes, and that it is undeniably the world that he, the creator, brought into existence. The MC comments that he understands, but wants to know if it is possible to view the game's meta information, since he thinks that only the parts related to development are useful. Leafy says that she can do that since he entered developer mode, and also because the game was made almost entirely by him. Then the MC manages to access the system's meta information screen and sees that he was the director, programmer, designer, chose the scenarios, and adjusted the sound, but the game master is listed under the name Wataru Onohara. Leafy asks who this Wataru is. Sushi explains that he is the man who stole the rights to his game. Having said that, he emphasizes that the fact that he is there is probably also Wataru's doing. and that he has no idea why he is inside the world of last, since he does not understand the logical reason behind it. But what he does know is that he cannot afford to be eliminated there. He then becomes serious and makes it clear that he will survive and reclaim his game from Wataru. Then he asks whether Leafy will be able to help him with that. She replies yes, and that she will do everything within her power. After that, the MC teleports near a cabin in the middle of the forest and comments that teleporting to the base is a very strange sensation. Next, he looks around and remarks that the base is still at level 1. Leafy says she is sorry and emphasizes that she could only provide that base. Sushi tells her not to worry because he thinks it is part of the specifications, since apparently, even in developer mode, he can only view the parameters. And upon entering the cabin, he sees a gem, and as soon as he approaches it, the system informs him that it is a magic stone called Arcanite, also known as Source Ore, a stone with special power that can store resources and convert them into weapons or items. The MC comments that he knows that normally this is where the tutorial would begin, but as the creator, he knows that he does not need one. Leafy is confused and asks what he means by that. Sushi explains that monsters do not appear during the tutorial, since it is a specific moment when one can safely gather materials. The little fairy comments that she understands and that, indeed, with his test character, normal gathering can be difficult. He emphasizes that this is because it is a character destined to be eliminated on the first night, and that in his current state, there is a chance of being removed from the world with just a single blow. Therefore, he stresses that he cannot waste time, because he needs to start immediately, and so he ends up deciding to begin the tutorial. After that, Sushi uses all the materials available up to the tutorial, and, even with his eyes closed, he knew exactly where the game's materials and resources were, since he knew there was no time to lose because he needed to prepare for the night attack. A few hours later, Leafy was at the base waiting for her creator, who soon appeared, and she commented that he had done a good job. Sushi calls her to create something he has in mind before night falls. She is impressed and wants to know if he really gathered enough materials during the tutorial to craft what he wants. The MC explains that he made the specifications so that it would be possible. Leafy comments that a player who truly managed to do that has never existed so far. After going inside the cabin, they go to the magic stone and begin crafting, which soon starts emitting a glow, and then informs that the crafting was successful, and the MC managed to create a wooden sword and a small wooden barricade. Sushi clicks to accept what he just created, but reflects that, in terms of equipment, he knows what he created is unreliable, since, to begin with, he did not design the test character to be capable of having the complete game, so he thinks that, even assuming the enemies move exactly as he expects and respond perfectly, he knows that the probability of survival is a few percent at most, and that normally the person would just be directed to the full version. But since this time the situation he is in is different, he thinks that all that remains is to hope that everything works out in the end. A few minutes later, night arrives and the forest takes on a sinister appearance. The system appears asking the MC to survive the night. He comments that the first challenge has begun, and Leafy wishes good luck to her creator. It does not take long before the shadow of a creature appears among the trees, but as it approaches the base a little more, the MC sees that it is just a non-violent animal. However, this creature is taken down, as a goblin, a low-level monster, appears. The creature has low intelligence, but is aggressive, and sometimes attacks in groups and should not be underestimated. Sushi quickly equips his wooden sword. Then he opens his status and sees that his base level is 1. He has 5 points in the attributes: health, strength, speed, and sense, and no special abilities. The goblin wastes no time and leaps to attack the MC, who in turn moves slightly to dodge the attack. Leafy, while watching her creator fight, thinks that he is managing to dodge, even though his attributes should not be sufficient. So she thinks that this is only possible because he knows every parameter of the goblins. The creature continues advancing non-stop, trying at all costs to land an attack on Sushi until the MC moves at the last second, but ends up being grazed on the wrist and thinks that, even knowing what was coming, he could not avoid it, since his speed is still very low. Thus, he decides to counterattack, but the goblin easily blocks the attack, and the MC realizes that his strength is also insufficient. The goblin takes advantage of the chance and lands a strong kick to the MC's stomach, who feels the blow and is thrown back with great force. But he soon begins to get up and feels that the blow he took truly hurts. However, he knows that the father of Last cannot afford to be eliminated in the game. Thus, he turns around and runs toward the cabin. While the goblin runs after him, Sushi thinks that the character he is using does not have the attributes to defeat a goblin head-on. However, he knows that with his intelligence, he can do something in his favor, so he clicks the incredible advancement in the system. And when he sees the goblin leap to attack, he creates large wooden stakes where it was, and the goblin falls onto them, being completely impaled. Sushi takes advantage of the creature being immobilized and quickly goes on the offensive, thinking that if he uses an attack with all his body weight, he will be able to eliminate it. He then delivers his attack to the goblin, but becomes quite exhausted from the battle and stares at the eliminated creature in front of him. With that, the system congratulates him for surviving the night. Sushi looks up and comments that he knows the world he is in better than anyone, but that surviving there is desperately difficult. Yet even so, he swears that he will definitely survive. Then he fills himself with confidence and shouts that even from the bottom of the abyss, he will crawl back to the surface and reclaim everything. After that, already on the next day, Sushi is observing his wooden sword and thinking that the texture seems completely real, until Leafy appears and gives a big good morning to her creator and asks if he is going out again to gather materials. Sushi replies that he is not, and explains that the previous day's tutorial was sufficient and that for now, he will focus on manual work because he needs to find a certain person as quickly as possible. Leafy is quite surprised to hear this, and upon checking the system, says that he already has basic resources. The MC thinks that a person can gather various materials around the base, and that the collected materials are converted into 3 types of basic resources and stored in the magic stone, where the first is mana, which is like vital energy, used to train people and generate magic-type items. The second is element, which is necessary to produce physical things like food and buildings. And finally, the third is gold, literally money, since sometimes a person can buy things that cannot be generated. After reflecting on this, the MC activates the magic stone, which soon shows the initial generation, and he sees the mana, the element, and the available crafting. Thus, he starts creating a few things and, before long, manages to obtain a bow, 10 arrows, and a watchtower. Sushi comments that he would like to create more powerful items, but with his current attributes, he knows it is impossible. Leafy emphasizes that the combination he created at least meets the appearance conditions of the character he is using. Next, the MC comments that he now needs allies to help with survival, and especially to get through the 7th day, since that is when the stampede happens, which makes the little fairy scared just thinking about it. Sushi has in mind that in the game, monster attacks basically happen every night, but that the so-called mass monster stampede occurs every 7 days and is at a completely different difficulty level. In addition, he knows that on the night of the stampede, the monsters attack incessantly and that the difficulty is adjusted so that even full version players barely manage to survive, and that even if one survives until day 6, it is theoretically impossible to clear a stampede with a test version character. But on the other hand, he also knows that if a person manages to clear the stampede with the free test character, there will be no need to buy the full version. At that moment, Leafy becomes even more terrified and comments that she thinks that even for her creator, surviving a stampede with a weak character is impossible. Sushi asks what will happen to him if he is eliminated there in the game. The little fairy replies that she does not know, but that eliminated NPCs normally do not resurrect, so she thinks he cannot come out unscathed. But Leafy shouts that even so, she will do everything to help him. However, she emphasizes that she cannot participate in combat due to system restrictions, but that she can give advice, although she thinks the creator might not need it. Even so, she makes it clear that she will work very hard to gather information so that he can survive. Sushi is surprised by her determination and concern, so he thanks her and says that he will be counting on her, but asks Leafy to stop calling him creator and to use only his name. Leafy comments that to her, the creator will always be the creator and laughs. Later, Sushi begins some work around the base. Then he clicks to build the watchtower, and it is soon placed in the location designated by him. As soon as it is built, he comments that it is a bit inconvenient to have to move in order to build things. Leafy informs him that at certain low base levels, he also cannot place things on the map. Upon climbing the watchtower, the MC is quite surprised, as he has a good view of the surrounding area. While the MC is impressed by the view he is seeing, Leafy comments that everything was created by him. Thus, Sushi reflects that indeed the world of Last is there, and the characters are alive, and that this is precisely why he cannot give up on reclaiming his game. After a few hours, night arrives, and the system informs that the second day's mission has begun, and the MC will have to survive another night. From the top of the watchtower, the MC spots the creatures and warns that they are coming. Having said that, he equips his bow and thinks that on the second night, he has to face 2 enemies, which is a completely different concept from the battle of the first day. He then readies the bow and comments that this time he will attack first, but he soon realizes that drawing the bow requires considerable strength. Leafy comments that she is sorry, since at his current level, there is no strength increase. He replies that it is fine, because he is responsible for having designed it that way, and therefore cannot complain. Having said that, he fires the arrow, which merely grazes the goblin's face without causing any significant damage. Sushi comments that unfortunately he missed, and Leafy apologizes and informs him that there is still no accuracy increase. While preparing another arrow, the MC comments that the difficulty at the beginning of the game is a specification he himself created and that there is no way to get around it. As soon as he fires the arrow, this time he hits one of the goblins in the knee, causing it to lose its balance. Leafy shouts that he did it and tells him to try again. The MC fires and hits the last goblin squarely. Thus, he takes advantage of the chance and jumps down from the tower. And while preparing another arrow to shoot at the goblin he had hit in the knee, he thinks that he learned from the previous day's battle that even with insufficient statistics, if he can anticipate one step ahead, there are ways to manage accuracy. The goblin tries to hit him, but he manages to dodge the attacks and soon readies his bow. Now, aiming the arrow very close to the opponent, he thinks that accuracy is inversely proportional to distance, and since there is no way to miss from that distance, he lands the shot cleanly. However, the previous goblin gets back on its feet, but is soon hit again. While the creature is down, the MC slowly approaches, prepares his bow once more, and finishes off the creature. With that, the system congratulates him for completing the second day's survival mission. Leafy is happy that her creator managed to survive. He replies that in a way, yes, but that in the midst of the forest, there is someone watching him closely. The very next day, the MC is gathering some materials he used during the battle. He tells Leafy that he still cannot waste supplies and that he needs to recover the arrows he can still use. The fairy informs him that some fired arrows break at a certain rate, but intact arrows can be recovered and reused. While observing the supplies collected by her master, she emphasizes that there should be 2 intact arrows, but that, for some reason she does not know, there is only one there, although she thinks she has a clue. With that, the system notifies that the recruitment mission has been activated, the mystery of the missing arrow, and soon both of them see several footprints ahead that lead toward the forest. Then, the two decide to follow the tracks. The MC, seeing Leafy far ahead, asks her to be careful. The fairy replies that she is fine, since she cannot interfere with the content of the game, and that it also cannot hurt her. Sushi continues following the tracks left by someone, and thinks that Last has a system where NPCs can become allies, and that when certain conditions are met during the game, NPCs will wander near the base. And if the person completes the recruitment mission exclusive to each NPC, they will join the group of the person who found them. In addition, from combat to production, NPCs have various areas of specialization and are essential to complete the game. So he concludes that, especially because his life is at risk, he needs allies. Until Leafy calls out to her creator and says that she found something. However, from the top of a tree, someone is waiting for them to fall into a prepared trap. And as soon as she hears the trap being activated, she immediately jumps from where she is and quickly prepares to take what she captured. This is Anemona, the hunter, who is surprised to see that the trap she prepared captured only a piece of wood. Sushi appears behind her saying that they are not enemies, which startles Anemona and makes her retreat immediately. As she runs away, the MC keeps shouting that he is not her enemy, and both of them are surprised and at a loss for words, until the MC says that he did not implement this kind of development in the game. Leafy emphasizes that, since he became a resident of that world, it seems that the game scenario is no longer progressing automatically. That said, she comments that her creator needs to persuade her through dialogue and that she may be wary of him. The MC says that he understands and that perhaps doing this is different from playing, but he considers the hypothesis that the characters are alive and wonders if, by making a mistake in his approach, they could become enemies. After that, and later on, Sushi completes another gathering mission, and Leafy comments that she is happy to see that her creator returns safely once again. She wants to know if he managed to replenish the item he needed. Sushi replies that he did, and emphasizes that fortunately, no monster appeared. That said, he calls Leafy to create what he had planned before. She wants to know if he thinks it will work. Sushi makes it clear that he was the one who created her character settings, and that, because of that, he believes the method he will use has the highest probability of success. Then, he explains that Anemona is a hunter who lived alone with her father, and that, even after his death, she continued living alone in the forest. And because of that, he thinks that if he can offer her the warmth of human companionship after such a stoic and solitary life, there is a great chance that she will join them. That said, he emphasizes that this is a situation that is not in the game scenario, and that, because of that, he thinks nothing is certain. And, without further delay, he begins crafting. It does not take long, and he creates an iron pot, a ladle, salt, pepper, ground meat, and 2 table utensils. Sushi comments that now he has everything he needs. Later, while cooking, the MC comments that he never thought the day would come when he would be cooking inside the game. Leafy says that at higher levels, he can generate finished products. He comments that this is also not a bad experience. The fairy wants to know if he is good at cooking. Sushi says that he lived alone for a long time, and that he used to isolate himself to focus on his personal development, and that shortly after graduating from high school, Wataru used to come to his house frequently. Then he takes a deep breath and comments that this is a long story and that it can be told another time. Then they hear a noise in the middle of the forest, and Anemona appears out of nowhere, pointing an arrow at the MC. He asks her to wait and comments that, as he said before, they are not enemies. Anemona wants to know if he has other companions, but Sushi is surprised by something since he sees Leafy making several movements in front of the hunter and, somehow, she cannot see Leafy. Therefore, the MC replies that there are no companions there with him because he is alone. Then he introduces himself and asks the hunter's name. She says that her name is Anemona, but wants to know where exactly she is because she was in the middle of a hunt, and, before she realized it, she entered an unfamiliar forest. Sushi points behind him and says that he just arrived at the area he is in, and that, even if she says where she was before, he does not know how that relates to the place they are in. That said, he takes some of the food he just prepared, which immediately draws the hunter's attention. He asks if she wants to eat and makes it clear that it contains no poison, since it is too much for one person. Anemona says nothing, but soon her stomach growls loudly from hunger. Therefore, the MC goes to prepare a portion of food for her. As soon as he finishes, he explains that the dish is a ground beef hamburger steak mixed with onion, breadcrumbs, salt, and pepper, and then grilled. The hunter takes a small piece to try it, and as soon as she eats it, she is completely amazed. Without wasting any more time, she starts eating non-stop. It does not take long for her to finish, and she comments that it is the first time she has eaten this kind of food and that it was really delicious. But she wants to know if the MC can make more. He replies that he can, since he has more ingredients, but emphasizes that he needs something in return. A little wary, Anemona grabs her bow and wants to know what he will want. Sushi replies that it is combat power, because the area there is dangerous. She replies that he can see and prepares to draw an arrow. Sushi makes it clear that if she does not want to be hunted, then she has to hunt. That said, the system informs that the third mission to survive the night has begun, and that the recruitment mission of the mystery of the missing arrow has progressed, and now he needs to fight alongside an NPC and win for the NPC to join his base. Then everyone prepares for combat, and she emphasizes that this is something she can definitely do. Next, some sinister eyes begin to appear in the middle of the forest, and soon, 3 armed goblins emerge. Leafy comments that there are only 3, but the MC says no, because he thinks more will come. And just as he predicted, more goblins come out from the forest and soon charge in. Sushi equips his wooden sword and shouts for the hunter to cover his rear. While she stays alert, she thinks that the MC drew a sword and wonders if it could be storage magic. Sushi, in turn, advances fighting against each of the goblins that come into his path. Anemona keeps watching him fight and thinks that she will not be able to provide cover while he is so close to the goblins. Until Sushi lands a kick on one of them and shouts that the first one is down. The hunter notices her chance and fires an arrow, finishing the first one, but she becomes intrigued, wondering if the MC is tracking her line of fire while fighting. It does not take long, and the MC manages to land another critical hit on another goblin, and in the same way, Anemona lands another incredible arrow shot, eliminating it. However, the goblin that the MC was holding jumps, pushing him to the ground. Seeing himself with no way out, Sushi thinks that he will use that moment to test something. Thus, he grabs the creature's arm and, with his foot, tries to throw it backward. When he succeeds, the hunter takes advantage of the chance and lands another arrow on the goblin while it is still in the air. She is impressed by the MC's agility until, with a few goblins still left to defeat, one of them notices something and, while one keeps fighting the MC, the rest go after the archer. She becomes frightened and, after hitting the arm of one of the goblins, thinks that she does not believe she will have time to make another shot. Therefore, she quickly draws her dagger and tries to block the attack of the 2 creatures at once. Sushi, seeing that she is struggling, shouts, asking Anemona to retreat toward the shed while they fight, and emphasizes that she does not need to finish off the goblins. One of them becomes furious and charges at the archer. She looks back and leaps with a somersault, dodging the creature's attack. And where the goblin steps, it ends up falling into a trap previously prepared by the MC. Upon reaching the bottom, it falls onto some wooden stakes and is eliminated instantly. Sushi laughs when he sees that his trap worked in the end, and then reflects that it was a good thing he built those traps. Now, with only 2 goblins remaining, the hunter charges at one of them, and the MC continues trying to defend himself from the attacks of the other goblin and thinks that, with the attributes of the character he is using, it is still quite difficult to fight, until the goblin manages to break his defense and knocks the sword away. But Sushi is impressed when he sees an arrow strike the creature squarely. He looks to the side and sees that Anemona defeated the goblin she was facing and even managed to help him. With that, the system informs that the 3rd day mission of surviving the night has been completed. Later, the MC goes to the magic stone to store some things. The hunter comments that so the MC is indeed a magic stone contractor. He replies that he only closed the contract recently. Leafy explains to her creator that NPCs understand various specific game abilities, such as special magic, usable only by those who have made a pact with a magic stone. Sushi tells the hunter that if she has nowhere to go, he wants to know if she would join him, because he needs allies to survive the place they are in. Anemona slowly walks up to the MC and says that she heard that magic stone contractors are those with a mission for the world, and that she thinks there may be meaning for the world she got lost in there. In addition, the MC's combat abilities were quite impressive, and that she will be counting on him. Saying that, she extends her hand to him. Sushi takes her hand, thanks her, and emphasizes that he is looking forward to working with her. With that, the system informs that the hunter, Anemona, has joined the group. The next day, the MC is preparing a delicious meal when he hears someone asking if it is breakfast. He replies that it is, and that it is already ready, but when he looks back, he is completely surprised, since he sees how the hunter is dressed. He immediately turns around, embarrassed, and thinks that she lived alone with her father in the forest for a long time, but wonders if that makes her so indifferent to being seen, and that he also needs to improve the base and add more rooms immediately. Then he reflects that he gained Anemona as combat power, but that, in any case, he cannot survive the stampede the way things are at the moment, and therefore has in mind that improving the base is the key to survival. Later, the MC goes into the forest to gather some materials. Anemona is doing this as well, and comments that Sushi is quite efficient at what he does. After gathering, Everyone returns to the base and the MC goes to the magic stone, becoming intrigued by something. The hunter wants to know what is wrong. Sushi replies that the resources needed to increase the base level are still not sufficient and that they are low on resources. She wants to know what he means by increasing the base level. He explains that if they accumulate enough resources in the magic stone, they can use the stone's power to build buildings and erect barricades. That said, he emphasizes that this is why he asked her to help him gather resources, since where they are, a massive monster outbreak occurs every 7 days, and therefore, they need barricades, and also want to increase the base's traps, so they need to be prepared if they want to survive. The hunter comments that she understands and that she will go out to gather once again. Sushi makes it clear that he will be counting on her and that he will try to think if there is any other way. Therefore, he comments to Leafy that if they borrow Anamona's power, who should not even be there at the beginning of the game, there is a chance they can get resources in time, but he thinks it will not be enough. The fairy points out that if they had an increase in the item drop rate, they might have managed it in time. Sushi says that he will think of another way, then asks the fairy to open the full console to developer mode. She replies that it is fine and works her magic. It does not take long, and both of them are surrounded by several system screens. Sushi comments that it would be great if he could adjust the parameters directly, but he knows that would be difficult in system terms, because even if he can adjust them, doing so while the game is live is quite risky, since he keeps in mind that due to the complexity of the game system, various adjustment systems operated by AIs run in real time, and the mechanism ensures that even if there are numerical inconsistencies in the game, the AIs correct them immediately. However, he knows that the only things that can be corrected are inconsistencies that occur within the scope of the game design, and because of that, if many arbitrary changes are made, this exceeds the scope of what the AI can correct and can cause bugs or unexpected malfunctions. However, it is also true that they will not survive the 7th day as things are, so he wonders if there is some method that goes beyond normal gameplay. Until, after thinking a lot, he gets an idea and comments that in the developer functions, there is a way to level up, regardless of the amount of resources. Therefore, he asks Leafy if they can use instant build mode. The fairy is quite surprised by her creator's sudden question. He explains that instant build mode is one of the test functions used during development, and that it allows the construction and upgrading of facilities regardless of the available resources. Leafy gets excited, saying that she understands, and emphasizes that if it is instant build mode, the system's AI will not intervene to correct it. Sushi comments that it is exactly as she said, since the system was built to accept modifications made by the developer. The fairy starts getting to work and comments that since her creator is logged into developer mode, she thinks the API might be open and she will look for it. It does not take long, and Leafy says that she found it. Sushi wants to know if it looks accessible. The fairy comments that she thinks it looks impossible through the console, but that if she dives deep into it, she might be able to. However, the MC shouts asking her to wait because it can be very dangerous. Leafy does not listen to her creator and enters the console. Looking around, she concludes that this is the API access point. Then she starts tinkering with the system to make her changes. And while she does that, a black AI appears behind the fairy. Upon noticing it, she turns around and soon becomes confused by what she is seeing. Suddenly, the AI starts absorbing all the data around. The fairy tries with all her might to escape, while wondering if the maintenance AI thinks she is a bug, but she tries again to make the changes, before being absorbed and corrected by the AI. A few seconds later, she gains access, and before the maintenance AI could reach her, she exits the system at the last second. Sushi wants to know if she is okay. Completely shaken, the fairy says that in a way she is, but that she was almost deleted by the maintenance AI. The MC says that he already imagined that, because her entry into the system is not normal behavior, and that the system probably recognized her as a bug and tried to exterminate her, which leaves her completely stunned to know that she could indeed have been eliminated. Then, the MC wants to know if it is possible to take a peek at the system through the console, but emphasizes that she does not need to enter. Leafy replies that it is, and by putting only her head in to take a quick look, she is frightened when she sees the number of maintenance AIs that have appeared. As soon as she returns, she says that the maintenance multiplied. Sushi comments that he understands and that apparently accessing the same API again seems difficult. Leafy apologizes to her creator, but he makes it clear that it is not her fault, since this is proof that the system is operating normally and that, in fact, he feels sorry for making her go through something so dangerous. That said, he emphasizes that he is glad to see that she is safe. Next, the system asks whether the MC will proceed with increasing the base level through instant build mode. Later, Anemona, upon returning from her task, is quite surprised since she is seeing the new constructions made at the base. Sushi goes out and opens the door of the shed and sees that the base is now level 3. The hunter comments that the magic stone he uses is indeed something incredible. Sushi emphasizes that although this does not mean they can do anything at any time they want, she should feel free to use whichever cabin she wants. However, the MC makes it clear that she must decide which cabin she wants immediately. Anemona is intrigued and asks why. At that moment, a bright beam of light descends forcefully from the sky in the middle of the base, and some silhouettes begin to appear within the light. The hunter is quite surprised, and the MC replies that it is because they will soon run out of cabins. That said, several people begin to appear from the light that fell from the sky. Anemona wants to know if the people she is seeing were teleported there. The residents who just arrived are somewhat shy. The hunter finds this strange and soon prepares to draw her dagger. Aesel immediately steps in front of her mother to protect her. The MC asks Anemona to calm down and then looks at the people in front of him. Then, he takes a deep breath and asks everyone to listen to him, introduces himself, and says that he has been living there for a few days before they arrive. That said, he explains that the base there is surrounded by a forest where monsters appear and that at night, these monsters attack the base. Therefore, he makes it clear that to survive there, he needs everyone's cooperation. The residents start talking among themselves until the old man Sylvan steps forward and asks if the MC also arrived there recently. He replies that yes, and says that he was guided by the magic stone. Sylvan, upon hearing about the magic stone, comments that he has heard some stories about it, but that he never imagined the day would come when he would be called by the origin ore while still alive. At that moment, Wald shouts, asking everyone to wait a bit, because they cannot simply take seriously what a stranger is saying. Then he comments that somehow it does seem true that they were teleported by magic, but that the MC could also have done it just to kidnap everyone. Sushi, seeing Wald wanting to leave the base, asks where he thinks he is going. He says that first, he is checking the surroundings. After all, he does not know if it is true that monsters appear. That said, he asks for half the people to stay there and for the other half to follow him. Sushi asks Anemona to protect the women who stayed. She wants to know what he will do. Sushi points to the others and says that he will protect them. A few minutes later, they head into the forest. The MC asks them not to go too far, but Wald and the others do not care. Sushi keeps in mind that the area around the base is a stage for gathering resources, but it is also a danger zone where monsters appear day and night, and that due to the game system, a person cannot travel to another base even if they leave their own, since it is a mechanism where stronger monsters appear the farther a person is from the base, limiting player movement, until they come across some horned rabbits. And Wald wants to know if by any chance these little creatures he is seeing are the ones that attack the base during the night. The MC replies that it is exactly that, which leaves the man confused. And while the little creatures transform, the MC makes it clear that it is a bit hard to believe, but that there is no better learning than experience. The little creatures are actually hunting rabbits, carnivorous and fierce monsters, and while they lower their prey's guard with their harmless appearance, they surround and attack in groups, soon charging at Wald and the others. Sushi runs toward them, asking everyone to close their eyes and hold their breath, and the three do exactly what Sushi asked. The MC takes 3 units of pepper from his inventory and throws the containers in the direction where each hunting rabbit is. As soon as the containers break, the pepper spills over the rabbits. Then, the MC tells everyone to run immediately. Wald wants to know what is happening, but Sushi makes it clear that they should return to the base first. While helping one of the residents return to the base, Wald runs after them, asking them to wait. Later, they safely return to the base, and Wald's group receives treatment. After that, some residents begin taking care of gathering and cultivation at the base, while the rest train with bows and swords. Anemona is willing to train them and, upon seeing Wald's group slacking off, shouts for them to continue training with the sword 50 more times. One of the residents comments to Wald that he thinks he is quite motivated. He replies that fists are not enough to defeat monsters and swears that he will win the next time he encounters one. The MC, on the other hand, just watches from afar as Azel trains non-stop, until Leafy appears saying that she thinks it is good for them to have more allies at the base. Sushi simply replies that he thinks so too, and while he continues watching Azel push himself, the fairy wants to know if there is something wrong, until she notices the MC watching the child in front of him attentively. Sushi keeps in mind that in the early stages of the game, events and guide characters are established, so that the player understands the rules of the game world through natural flow, and that Azel is a character created to convey the fact that NPCs who are eliminated do not come back to life, since during a certain monster attack, Azel is destined to lose his life in the fight, and that by witnessing the pain of the boy's mother, the player learns that each NPC is an irreplaceable existence. While he continues watching Azel train with such dedication, he knows that even so he will soon be eliminated, but wonders whether he has the power to change fate. A few hours later, the villagers have set the table and are making food, and the others are returning from training. Wald sits on a chair and comments that because they have been training so much, he is starving. Then a woman arrives with the food but warns him that it is very hot. Lila calls the MC and the others and asks them to help themselves as well. The huntress wastes no time and quickly sits down to eat, and so everyone gathers around the table to eat the delicious food. Azel asks Miss Anemona how her sword training went. She replies that it was not bad, but points out that he needs to improve with the bow and arrow, which leaves him a little disappointed. Sushi, watching them talk, has in mind that the boy Azel is an NPC in the game, created to help players understand the rules of last, and that, even if players do not send Azel into battle, the boy, who is overly confident, will advance into combat anyway and lose his life. Then, players truly realize that NPCs do not revive. Wald starts joking with Azel, saying that it looks like he is finally joining the adults, but the boy's mother asks Wald not to encourage him. Azel immediately turns around, indignant at his mother, and says that monsters are always attacking and that, because of that, he needs to become strong enough to fight. Lila makes it clear to her son that he does not need to fight now, since that should be left to the adults. But Azel shouts that he wants to protect everyone and asks if his daddy was not strong too. Lila replies that his father was indeed strong, but emphasizes that he never confused recklessness with courage. The MC thinks that the boy's mother is right, because recklessness and courage are not the same thing, and that, to prevent Azel from being eliminated, he needs a new strategy, one that is made of courage and supported by a calculated gamble. As soon as they finish eating, Sylvan asks them to stop this conversation for a moment and makes it clear to Azel that he is still a child and cannot fight like an adult. Then, just as his mother herself said, he should not confuse courage with recklessness. Not liking being contradicted very much, the boy lowers his head and replies that he understands. At that moment, the MC becomes thoughtful upon hearing some villagers comment that they need to work together to protect the village, while others comment that this is not their village. Then the old man notices the MC looking a bit distant and asks if something is wrong. Sushi apologizes and says that he was just distracted by his thoughts. Next, the old man asks the MC if there happens to be any sake in the village. Wald finds this strange and questions Sylvan about whether this is something to discuss before a battle. The old man bursts into laughter and replies that he is doing this precisely because it is before the battle, since he does not want to be eliminated sober. Wald makes it clear that this is a useless resolution, but the MC comments that if they survive that night's attack, they will make a proper toast. Leafy is confused and asks her creator what that is. Sushi looks at the villagers and explains that it is because they are all alive, but that he is the one responsible for having thrown them into a brutal survival test. However, he emphasizes that this is indeed necessary to make last the best game. The little fairy agrees with her creator and points out that, without him, they would not even exist. But the MC does not like this idea of being their creator very much, because just thinking about becoming a careless god who creates things and then shirks responsibility already makes it clear that this is really not what he wants. After that, the afternoon begins to draw to a close. Sushi gathers the villagers and says that the monsters will attack again that night, and that, because of this, they will review everyone's positions and prepare. Having said that, he begins by stating that, first, the people who will not participate in combat will keep watch around the base, since the monsters usually come from only one direction, but that they cannot let their guard down, and therefore must split up and monitor the surroundings. Second, the people who know how to fight, the 3 most skilled with bows, will form an archer unit under Anemona's command. The rest will pair up, using swords and moving constantly. With that said, he explains that one pair will guard the front of the archery unit, and that Wild and the others will be on the front line with him. The big guy gets excited, saying that he will finally have his revenge. However, he wants to know who the MC will form a pair with. Immediately, Sushi looks at Aesol, which leaves the boy and the other people unable to believe the MC's decision. Aesol's mother steps forward, asking Sushi to wait a second, and comments that he cannot throw her son straight into battle. The MC crosses his arms and comments that he understands how she feels. However, he emphasizes that staying in the back does not guarantee safety. Then he explains that, if the boy is willing to fight, he thinks it is better that he fights and becomes stronger quickly, since this can increase his chances of survival. With that said, he becomes serious and swears that he will protect Aesol with everything he has. Next, the MC reflects that if the boy is eliminated, the system's AI will act to ensure that outcome, and that, in that case, placing Aesol on the front line will make it easier to predict enemy movements. However, he keeps in mind that this is not guaranteed, but that to overturn the predetermined result, he will have to take risks and overcome them for him. Then the huntress comments to Aesol's mother that she can trust Sushi in battle, but the MC emphasizes that this will only happen if the boy is serious. At that moment, Aesol shouts that he is serious, and that he wants to be strong like his daddy. Lila continues to worry about her son, but he nods his head, hinting to his mother that everything will be fine. Thus, the MC raises his arm and shouts, saying that the world they are all in is cruel, and that waking up safely every morning is not guaranteed, but that night, those who win, those who survive, will be them. It does not take long for night to fall, and for the creatures to begin appearing from the middle of the forest, and soon the system asks them to survive another night. The MC thought that the battle initially proceeded almost exactly as planned. However, still worried about the boy, he asked Leafy to keep an eye on Aesol and that, if anything happens, she is to inform him immediately. Seeing the monsters approaching, Anemona shouts, asking the archers to try to scatter the horde and keep shooting, and that it does not matter if their aim is bad. Some goblins begin to be hit by the arrows, while others continue advancing. But as the MC had predicted, the wave of fired arrows causes the goblin horde to split apart. Then, Sushi shouts, asking them to finish off the goblins one by one and not to break the pairs, since they are to maintain the numerical advantage. But he emphasizes to Wald that he is not to let the enemy get close to the watchtower. As the battle went on, the MC thought that, corresponding to the evolution of the base, the number of monsters increased, but that, for the villagers' first battle, they did well, since they prevented the enemies from coordinating and defeated them reliably using two-man cells. Wald advances against a goblin, wanting to know what is going on, since they seem quite weak. However, as he attacks it, something strange happens in the creature's eyes, and that same goblin, while fighting Wald, keeps looking at the boy Aesol. But Wald lands a blow on that goblin and asks if the creature thinks it is good to look away in the middle of a fight. Then, he knocks the goblin to the ground and, while finishing it off, wants to know if the creature was really that curious to know what was happening where it was looking. Time goes by, and the villagers manage to defend against the monster's onslaught, and, using traps effectively, they constantly reduce the number of enemies, and, as expected, with Aesol's presence, the creature's movements were easier to read. However, the MC had in mind that the world of Last was not so forgiving, since one of the goblins refused to be defeated. And, once again, something strange happened in the creature's gaze, which left one of the villagers intrigued upon noticing it. And, after being attacked by another goblin, he comments to his friend beside him that, all of a sudden, the goblins became stronger. The huntress is surprised when she notices the strange movements of the goblins. Then, she jumps from the watchtower, saying that she will be counting on them because she needs to help on the front line. While the MC is fighting one of the goblins, Leafy is behind with Aesel and always on alert, until Sushi hears her shouting, telling him to watch his back. Aesel is knocked down by one of the goblins, but the MC shouts for the boy to try to get up as quickly as possible. However, Aesel sees a very sharp dagger pointed at one of his eyes and becomes very frightened. Then an arrow hits the goblin that was holding the boy squarely. The arrow was fired by the huntress from very far away, but the goblins do not care in the slightest about the huntress and soon turn their attention back toward Aesel. Anemona does not like this at all, because the creatures did not go after her, since she has in mind that this is unthinkable considering the habits of goblins. At that moment, Wald appears delivering an attack on one of the goblins, and with his other hand, tries to hold the other creature while laughing and saying that he would never accept losing to a mere goblin. However, due to the goblin's sudden increase in strength, the creature he was holding throws him away. Now the goblin is right behind the boy and soon lunges forward. Aesel cannot move because he is trembling greatly with fear. Then Sushi steps in front, blocking the goblin's attack, but ends up on his knees when he realizes that the creature's strength does not seem normal. So he wonders if this could be a system intervention to guarantee Aesel's elimination. The goblin takes advantage of the MC being distracted and lands an attack on his shoulder with its sharp claws. The commotion does not stop, and soon another goblin appears to attack the boy, but this time, Anemona appears, striking the creature with her sharp dagger. However, the goblin refuses to be defeated and tries to get up. Wald appears and lands a solid punch on the goblin, slamming it hard into the ground. The big guy laughs and emphasizes that humanoid monsters are great because they are very easy to punch. The huntress notices another goblin trying to stand up and charges at it with everything she has, and the MC shouts for Anemona and Wald to try to draw the goblins away from the boy. The big guy falls on top of the goblin, throwing several punches, and says that it is easier said than done. Then he becomes very startled when he sees an arrow hit the goblin squarely in the head. Anemona asks Wald to remember what the MC had asked. Next, Sushi asks Ussel to strike the head of the goblin he is holding. The boy is afraid, but the MC says that this is the turning point of the boy's destiny, and that, if he wants to live, he must fight. Then asks if Aesel does not want to be strong like his father. Thus, the boy grips the sword firmly and delivers an attack exactly where the MC had indicated. Sushi takes advantage of the opportunity and finishes off the creature, which falls stiff to the ground. Sushi comments that Aesel did a good job, and as they advance, the MC comments that the battle is already almost over. They head to where Wald and Anemona are fighting, and another villager joins the battle as well. After several hours of fighting, they manage to eliminate all the goblins. Sushi raises his sword high and shouts that they have won, which leaves everyone excited about the victory. With that, the system informs them that they have successfully survived the 4th night. Lila is happy to see that her son is well, so she runs to him and hugs him tightly. The MC watches the two of them embracing and thinks that somehow he managed to reverse Assel's destined elimination, and that he will also overcome the monster stampede of day 7 without letting anyone be eliminated. On the following day, Sushi manages to raise the base to level 5. Wald checks the new defenses and comments that they are indeed incredible. Sylvan wants to know if this is the power of the magic stone, and the MC replies that it is. Then he explains that monsters defeated in battle and items collected in the forest are stored inside the magic stone as resources, and that, in exchange for the stored resources, they can use the power of the magic stone to upgrade the base. In addition, as the base becomes stronger, the limits of their attributes under the protection of the magic stone increase. Wald does not understand very well and asks what that means. Anemona comments that it means that the stronger the base becomes, the stronger everyone there can become. But the MC emphasizes that this does not mean a person will become stronger by doing nothing, since they merely become capable of growing, and that without training or experience, nothing changes. With that said, he calls everyone to have breakfast, because training will begin as soon as they finish. Sushi reflects that, thanks to the base level increase with instant construction mode, they managed to secure personnel and equipment far beyond what is normal for the beginning of the game, and safely survived the 2 attacks that followed. In addition, each NPC evolved, and their teamwork became smoother. Azel's growth, in particular, was remarkable, since the AI did not focus its attacks on the boy after that, and he became a capable combat asset. And finally, the 7th day arrived, and they were about to face the first monster stampede. But before that, the MC was checking the equipment, observing each sword, until Lila appears calling him to have breakfast. He thanks her for the reminder, but continues what he was doing. She wants to know what he is working on, and Sushi explains that he is organizing the low-durability weapons, since the stampede will finally be that night, and that if the swords break during battle, it will be disastrous. With that said, he ties some red ribbons on a few swords that appear more worn and comments that this should solve it. Then he calls a guy passing by and asks him not to use the swords with the red mark, since their durability is low, and to make sure to inform everyone else as well. The guy is surprised, but replies that he will inform them. Lila keeps insisting for the MC to go have breakfast, but he emphasizes that he will eat right after checking the traps. The woman, while observing the swords with red marks, comments that she understands. Several hours later, night falls and everyone is gathered. Sushi says that that night the monster stampede will occur, which happens once every 7 days, and that it will be an attack on a larger scale than any attack they have seen before. With that said, he emphasizes that those who are at the base need to grab weapons and defend from within, and that to ensure they are not overwhelmed by enemy numbers, they will fight in a compact formation this time. Next, he asks everyone to get ready and make sure to check their weapons twice. Asel, upon observing his sword, is surprised, turns around, and runs to his formation. A guy wants to know if the boy is all right, and he replies that he is. Sushi shouts, asking to close the gates and for everyone to hold their positions. Asel's mother is at a distance with some people and is afraid that something will happen to her son. But as she looks more closely, she notices that his sword has the red mark that the MC had placed earlier to indicate that the weapon has low durability, so she becomes terrified. But at that exact moment, the monster stampede begins, and the creatures march toward the base. The system issues a red alert and announces that day 7 has arrived, and that a massive invasion called Stampede is occurring. And, while Azel stays alert, the system informs that the mission is to survive the stampede. The goblins begin to advance, and one of the villagers on the front line becomes worried about the large number of creatures he is seeing, but the MC asks him not to waver, because they prepared for this day. Then, upon seeing the creatures get even closer to the base, the MC shouts asking the huntress to release the fire arrows. She prepares and shouts asking the other archers to remain calm and aim as in training. And as soon as the goblins advance a little more, the fire arrows are fired, and when one of them hits a mark, it triggers a bomb that causes a huge explosion among the goblins. Wald comments that he loved seeing that. The MC reflects that, since the base leveled up, the production of gunpowder was completed in time, and they turned it into explosive landmines, but that they are only effective against a horde of low-intelligence goblins. Therefore, he asks everyone not to lower their guard, because the creatures are already arriving. The goblins advance through the dust left by the explosion and charge straight at the humans. Wald eliminates the first one, as do the MC, Asel, and the others. Anemona asks the archers to leave the area in front to the allies below, because they need to stop the creatures coming from behind. And just as she described, the goblins begin to come from another direction. But since they were already prepared for this, they start eliminating the goblins. However, one manages to advance without being hit and goes after an archer, who becomes very frightened. Then a woman appears from behind and impales the goblin that was going to attack the archer. Soon, 2 more people appear, preventing the creatures from breaking through the encirclement. The defensive battle continues intensely, but the traps and strategies they prepared beforehand were all working. The MC, while fighting alongside Wald, comments that at the pace they are going, he thinks they will be able to hold the position without problems. Then a loud, thunderous roar echoes through the forest, which leaves Anemona very worried, wanting to know what that was. Sushi shouts for her to be careful until a huge creature appears before the battlefield, leaving the MC unable to believe what he is seeing, as he is facing an enormous goblin. The system explains that the creature that appeared is the Goblin Lord, a kind of high-ranking goblin that possesses power on a different scale. Goblins that hear his roar are inspired and have their attributes temporarily increased. Facing the creature, The MC cannot believe that the Goblin Lord appeared in the very first stampede. Then, the Goblin Lord lets out another loud roar, and soon the lesser goblins are inspired and their attributes increase. Asel begins to have difficulty fighting one of the creatures, and, while trying to defend himself at all costs, realizes that the goblins suddenly became stronger. His mother, on the other hand, is very worried, fearing that, in this way, something very bad might happen. Then, seeing that people are managing to hold back the onslaught of some goblins, she turns around and leaves. At that moment, the Goblin Lord begins advancing toward the base. The MC notices this and shouts for everyone to be careful. Anemona comments that they are not safe there on the watchtower and asks everyone to jump immediately. And as soon as they leap, the Goblin Lord completely smashes the tower. Anemona manages to reach the ground safely, but the archer who was with her cannot land the same way and ends up injuring his leg. The huntress drags the boy and shouts that there is a wounded person and that they need to take him inside the base because he needs a medic. Then she is surprised to see Asel's mother rushing past at full speed holding a sword, so she starts shouting, wanting to know where she thinks she is going, but Lila does not hear and keeps running toward her son. Meanwhile, the MC is facing some goblins and their lord, but even so, he remains confident and determined to survive at all costs. Meanwhile, Lila is desperately running to deliver the sword to her son when she is surprised to see a goblin in front of her staring at her. She does not think twice and charges at it, but the hunter, from a distance, lands a direct arrow shot on the goblin. Then she goes to Asel's mother and asks what she thinks she is doing. Desperate, Lila shouts that she needs to deliver the sword to her son because the sword he is using has low durability. Anemona makes it clear that she will deliver the sword and tells her to go back. But at that exact moment, another goblin charges at Lila. The hunter is faster and eliminates the creature with another precise arrow. However, looking around, she comments that apparently there is nothing else to do but that she will hold them there. While Lila runs to deliver the sword to her son, Anemona tries to clear a path with her arrows. Lila keeps running and thanking the hunter profusely. Anemona sees that the boy's mother managed to get past the creatures, but is now surrounded by several goblins. So she thinks she is in a very complicated situation. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Wald and his partner are fighting non-stop and comment to each other that the goblins are suddenly getting stronger and stronger. Then Wald hears a loud noise coming from the direction of the watchtower and shouts, asking what is happening over there. The Goblin Lord and the other creatures begin to approach the MC, and the man, who is with Sushi, becomes frightened when he sees the size of the creature in front of him. The MC explains that a Goblin Lord is a high-level type of goblin, and that it should not be appearing in this seventh-day wave. From a distance, Asel sees the enormous goblin attacking the others and shouts that he needs to go support them. The MC and his partner, while facing the lower goblins, do not notice the enormous Goblin Lord preparing to attack them. Then, Sushi realizes what is about to happen and shouts for his partner to be careful, but the creature's blow is so strong that it cracks the ground where they are and throws the MC's partner far away, along with several goblins that were around the impact area of the creature's attack. Sushi cannot believe that the enormous goblin was capable of attacking its own allies as well. As soon as his partner falls to the ground, he quickly reaches him and tries to protect him until he gets back up. Then, he asks if he can stand. At that moment, Asel and his partner arrive to help the MC and his partner, but the Goblin Lord does not hesitate and already prepares another attack. Asel is frightened and shouts, warning that the creature is going to attack again. The Goblin Lord swings his club. Sushi pulls up his shield to try to defend, but he is surprised by something, and when the Goblin Lord attacks, the MC manages to return the very attack back at the creature. Asel and the others are impressed by this. The boss, however, becomes furious. Sushi takes advantage of an opening and attacks the creature. Then, he reflects that a perfect defense, synchronized with timing, is a success, since he knows it is a common technique in games, but executing it in real time is frightening. At that moment, the Goblin Lord becomes even more furious and lets out another shrill roar that echoes throughout the entire battlefield. One of the goblins tries to attack the MC from the side, but Asel appears, blocks the attack, and tells Sushi to leave that side to him because he will protect it. The MC's partner comments that he will leave the big one to him and that he will help Asel prevent the lower goblins from trying to interfere, but makes it clear that he needs to do it quickly because he thinks they will not last long. Therefore, Sushi charges straight at the boss with everything he has and thanks his partners. As he gets close to the creature, he quickly runs to the right side, but the Goblin Lord does not hesitate and attacks. Sushi blocks with his shield and thinks it will be bad if this turns into a war of attrition, since he needs to reverse this situation somehow. Then Leafy appears calling out to him, and Sushi shouts asking her to show the random number generation console. She is confused by the sudden request, but replies that she will do it. It does not take long before she informs him that it is ready. Sushi sees on the system console that random number generation is active, and that AI balancing is also active. Leafy asks what he is checking. The MC explains that the random number generation modifier is active, and that the generation AI is overloaded, and because of that, he can use all critical hits. The little fairy asks what that means, but the Goblin Lord grows even more impatient and shouts loudly once again. Sushi explains that a critical hit is an attack that ignores the opponent's defense and deals double the normal damage. However, he knows that this was practically impossible, even in test games, since random numbers are numbers generated randomly, almost like rolling a die to deal with probabilities within the game, and that this process is called random number generation. However, he also knows that last's random number generation system has a bug that was postponed for later correction, in which, if a person blocks an enemy's attack 15 times in a row, the AI tries to adjust the random number generation system because the attacks are not landing enough, but in return, this adjustment overloads the related memory, causing the random number generation system to freeze, and, as a result, temporarily all attacks become critical hits. Hearing this leaves Leafy very surprised, since she had no idea that something like this could happen, but she also wants to know if such a thing is really possible. Sushi grips his sword tightly and replies that he thinks he can do it, but that there was a good reason the correction of this bug had been postponed, since blocking an enemy's attack 15 times in a row was something almost impossible, even in test games. However, he fills himself with confidence and concludes that he will see whether such a feat truly borders on the impossible. That said, he prepares himself and comments that he will have to defend against 15 consecutive attacks. The Goblin Lord attacks the MC, and he manages to block the first, then the second. The boss becomes furious when he sees his attacks being blocked and begins to attack frenetically. Sushi tries to withstand the boss's fury and blocks yet another attack. Asura, while fighting a creature, is surprised to see that the MC is enduring the attacks of the enormous creature. Upon blocking the fourth attack, Sushi tells Leafy that if he keeps blocking the attacks in sequence, he thinks they can turn the situation around. But Asura begins to have difficulty fighting until his mother arrives and shouts for him. Meanwhile, the MC continues trying to block the boss's attacks, who in turn becomes even more furious and tries to land a kick on the MC, which he also manages to defend. The Goblin Lord loses his balance and crashes heavily to the ground. Sushi laughs when he sees that he is managing to pressure the creature, but soon has to jump back because the boss gets back up, and then he blocks the creature's 11th attack. The Goblin Lord does not tire and tries at all costs to hit the MC, who continues blocking, reaching an incredible 13 consecutive defenses. Meanwhile, Asura is trying to hold back one of the goblins, but when he notices that the other runs toward the MC, he shouts trying to warn Sushi, who in turn blocks another attack and thinks he is doing very well, since he has blocked 14 attacks and only one more remains. But because his concentration is focused on the fight against the Goblin Lord, he is surprised to realize that one of the goblins is about to attack him. Asura appears to protect him, but when he tries to attack with his sword, it completely breaks, since its durability was extremely low, leaving the boy unable to believe that this happened at such a moment. The goblin quickly turns to attack Asura, but Lila shouts for her son to grab the sword, and saying that, throws the sword to him. As soon as Asura catches it, he eliminates the goblin without much difficulty. Sushi turns immediately, as the boss is about to strike with his club, and the creature delivers the blow, but the MC finally manages to block the 15 consecutive attacks. He laughs, apologizes to the Goblin Lord for the delay, and says that now the battle will end in an instant. With that said, he turns and charges at the enormous creature, delivering several attacks, all of them critical hits, and finally finishes with a double downward strike. The Goblin Lord sways from side to side, doing nothing, and then collapses heavily to the ground. The other goblins notice that their leader has been defeated and immediately retreat from the base. Wald and the others see the creatures running away and soon want to know what is happening. Leafy goes to her creator and says that he was incredible and that he succeeded. Very exhausted, he replies that yes, but that it was by a very narrow margin. Azel looks at the boss's body lying on the ground and comments that he thinks they won. Lila is happy to see that her son is safe, but soon becomes frightened when she sees the boss suddenly opening his eyes. She then jumps in front of her son and is struck directly by the creature. Sushi stands up immediately and shouts that he did not expect the Goblin Lord to still be able to move. Then he delivers the final attack on the creature, and as soon as he eliminates the boss, Azel runs to his mother and shouts in concern for her. While he cries, she comments that she is very happy that he is safe, and that now she is going to where Azel's father is. He starts crying even more and desperately shouts, asking her not to say that. Lila makes it clear that her son needs to meet them again after a long time, because now he needs to live his life, grow up healthy, and be strong, and that when they reunite, she wants Azel to tell her his stories, because she will be very eager to hear them. Azel, realizing that his mother has passed away, lets out a cry of pain that is heard throughout the entire base. Sushi and the others are left completely speechless, and to make matters worse, it begins to rain, making the environment cold and sad, until the system informs that the mission to survive the stampede has been completed. On the following day, the first gravestone of the base is made, and Sushi is observing it attentively. Leafy calls out to her creator and says that she could not find the reason why the Goblin Lord appeared, but that at least there are no traces of modification in the game's settings. She then emphasizes that even though the title of Game Master was stolen from him, he still has the authority to manage the smaller game settings, but that she thinks it should not be possible to alter the settings freely. With his head lowered, the MC comments something about the Great Architect, which leaves Leafy confused. Sushi comments that he was being arrogant since he thought he knew everything about the world he is in just because he was the guy who created it and believed that, no matter the situation, he would be able to handle it, but that in reality, he ended up letting someone be eliminated, someone who should not have been. Leafy tries to cheer him up by saying that this may be true, but also that if her creator had not been there, the base would have been destroyed, and that it is thanks to him that the NPCs are still alive. Sushi comments that he knows they are alive because he is the guy who created them, and that he is also the guy who made them suffer and who is leading them to death. With that said, he starts walking back into the base completely disappointed and then asks Leafy to leave him alone for a while. Sushi goes to a more distant place from the base and sits on the ground. Anemona appears wanting to know what he is doing. At that moment, some birds begin to fly around the area. The hunter prepares her arrow and shoots, hitting one directly. The bird falls to the ground, and Anemona says that in this world they risk their lives just to survive, but that sometimes they take lives, and sometimes their lives are taken, but that this is no one's fault, because that is how things are. The MC tries to argue, saying that even so, he still thinks that he has, in some way, a bit of guilt. Anemona walks away asking him to follow her, because he needs to see something. When they return to the base, the residents are training non-stop. Sushi asks what she wants to show him. She points forward, and as soon as the MC looks, he sees Azel training non-stop, always moving forward and forward. Anemona says that the boy has been doing this since the funeral that morning, and the MC is surprised. The hunter explains that the boy says he wants to have many stories to tell his mother, and that, for that, he needs to become stronger. Sushi is impressed when he learns this. At that moment, the boy who was training with Azel sits down on the ground and asks for a bit of rest, as he is very tired. Azel, noticing that the MC is there, runs over to him calling out to him. Sushi feels a bit awkward, but soon becomes completely surprised when he hears Azel calling him to fight. The boy beats his chest and makes it clear that he wants to become stronger so he can tell all kinds of stories to his mommy, and that he cannot afford to break down yet. Sushi swallows hard, then goes to a barrel where there are swords and comments that he is right. Thus, as he picks up a sword, he makes it clear that he will not go easy on the boy. Azel gets excited and says that this is how things should be. With that said, he charges at the MC, who in turn while crossing swords with the boy, thinks that they are all alive and that they are living with far more intensity than he ever imagined, and that apparently, if that is the case, then he should show them a way of life he will not be ashamed of. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest, there are two people walking. The boy wants to know exactly where they are. The old man picks up a damaged arrow from the ground and comments that the arrow was created by a magic stone, since he can feel that there are traces of mana in it. The boy is surprised and asks what he means. The old man clenches his fist tightly around the arrow and comments that perhaps they are finally close to a lead. With that said, they resume walking through the forest toward the MC's base. A few minutes later, inside the base, food is being served. Anemona stares at the food, waiting for the moment she can attack it, until Sushi notices some people approaching the entrance of the base. Leafy calls out to her creator, but he comments that apparently they have arrived. The residents are surprised by what they are seeing. One of the people who has just arrived at the base is Dorn, the dwarf craftsman, who immediately wants to know who the leader of that village is. Ginger, the other dwarf craftsman, asks his master to be a bit more gentle in the way he speaks. The MC appears saying that he is the leader there. Dorn becomes serious and gets straight to the point, asking if the MC has magic stones there at the base. Ginger feels a bit embarrassed by his master's sudden question and tries to explain, saying that they are actually dwarves traveling in search of rare materials, and that they heard there were magic stones there and were hoping that the MC would let them see them. Sushi comments that they were about to have dinner and that if they want, they can talk more while they eat together. Ginger is happy with the invitation and thanks him. As soon as everyone sits down to eat, the MC watches the dwarves attentively, since he knows that Dorn and Ginger are dwarf craftsmen NPCs, and that if he can make them allies, he will be able to strengthen weapons and develop facilities that cannot be created with magic stones. Therefore, he comments that Dorn had mentioned that he wanted to see and touch the magic stones, and he replies that that is exactly right. Ginger looks from side to side, waiting for some response from both sides, until he decides to explain that they are traveling in search of a material called the Philosopher's Stone. Sushi is surprised to hear about this. Ginger explains that the Philosopher's Stone is a legendary existence, but that it is believed to truly exist, because weapons said to have been created using it as a material still exist at that time. However, he emphasizes that no one, not even the long-lived dwarves, has ever seen the true Philosopher's Stone, and that, as craftsmen, it is the ultimate rare material that they absolutely must touch at least once. Dorn emphasizes that he understands that mana seems to be involved in the MC's refinement. Sushi keeps in mind that it is true that there is an item called the Philosopher's Stone in Last. However, he knows that such an item was defined as a reward for a special multiplayer raid mission, since it is impossible to obtain it through normal play, in the sense that only players can obtain it, and that it is not wrong to say that it is closely related to mana or magic stones. Thus, the MC comments to the dwarves that they want to see the magic stones. Ginger replies that not magic stones, since the source ore is also extremely rare, and that she understands they are precious to everyone in the village, but that she intends to use them only as a reference. So she wants to know if the MC would be willing to show them to them. Sushi comments that he would love to show them, which makes Ginger very excited to know that she will finally see a magic stone. However, the MC emphasizes that in return, he wants them to forge some weapons, since the place is attacked by monsters almost every night, and that, to protect the lives of his companions, they will need high-quality weapons. Dorn replies that it is fine, and Ginger thanks the MC and emphasizes that it will be a task for them, the dwarf craftsmen. Sushi comments that he will show the magic stones as soon as they finish the meal, but he wonders how he can make them join the village. After finishing dinner, they go to the cabin where the magic stone is. The dwarves observe the stone attentively without blinking. Dorn comments to the MC that, apparently, the magic stone there is different from what he is looking for, and Ginger is surprised to see that the old man has already noticed. Dorn explains that the magic stone there is more like a portal than a material. It is a path to mana, which is fundamentally different from the material they need. Sushi asks if that was not what they were looking for, but thinks that this was already expected since their perception is quite precise, as he knows that the magic stone there is an interface for the player and is not the kind of thing that can be used as a material. Dorn comments that he is very grateful that the MC let him see the magic stone. However, he emphasizes that it does not seem to be a clue to the Philosopher's Stone, and that, therefore, they will depart early the next morning. Sushi explains that, on his part, he would not mind if they stayed a little longer, and that, in fact, the village has a workshop that is not being used and there are materials they could produce with the magic stones. In addition to believing that he can provide an excellent environment for craftsmanship, the old man replies no, apologizes, but makes it clear that he needs to continue his journey. The MC takes a deep breath, comments that he understands, but asks them please to at least forge the weapons, since the monsters will certainly attack that night as well. With that said, as they all leave the cabin, the MC informs them that he will show the workshop and that they should feel free to use the equipment as they wish. Leafy asks her creator if everything is all right, since she fears that at this pace the dwarves will not become allies. Sushi comments that he knows that, but that he also noticed that Master Dorn has a strong desire to find the Philosopher's Stone, and that anything else probably will not move his heart. However, he knows that at least the old man's disciple is a young craftswoman, and, by the way people react to her work and by the influence she has, he thinks she must have the desire to experience these things directly, since he understands that feeling very well, because it was the same way when he started making games. Thus, while observing Ginger looking disappointed to learn that they will not stay there longer, the MC concludes that if Ginger feels that this place is where she can find fulfillment as a craftswoman, he is almost certain that the possibility of her wanting to stay is high. After a few hours, night arrives, and the battle to survive another night begins. Ginger is impressed to see that the monsters are indeed attacking. Then, 2 goblins are struck directly by arrows. The archer who fired them comments that the piercing power is completely different when the arrowheads are reinforced. Ginger comments that if they had a bit more time, she could have increased the accuracy as well. The archer replies that he does not think so, because the way it is now is more than sufficient, thanks her, and continues firing arrows at the goblins below the watchtower. Meanwhile, Wald and Aesel are on the front line fighting the creatures. Ginger watches Wald and thinks that a 2-handed sword would probably be better for him, since he is big, and that if she adjusted the boy's center of gravity, she thinks it would be much easier for him to swing the sword freely. Dorn merely watches his disciple analyze the things around her very carefully. Meanwhile, the MC is also fighting his battle, until Leafy appears wanting to know if Ginger will be their ally. Sushi replies that he thinks it may be difficult with words alone, and while the little fairy is confused by what he just said, the MC eliminates the creature in front of him. Sushi looks up and seeing how interested Ginger is in helping comments that the craftswoman does not seem to dislike the idea of wanting to be their ally. After that, and already on the next day, after the dwarves made some weapons in the workshop, Ginger tells the old man that she will go get the luggage. As soon as Dorn's disciple leaves the workshop, a guy calls her and says that she really helped everyone at the base the night before. Another resident appears saying that, thanks to her, he thinks defeating the enemies was very easy. Ginger feels embarrassed, but says she is happy to have been able to help in some way. After the residents leave, Ginger feels very happy for having been recognized, until Aesel and Wald appear. The big guy comments that his sword, which she improved, has a really nice cut. The boy also thanks her for adjusting his sword, since it became much easier to handle. Wald pats Ginger on the back and, laughing, says that she should stay in the village for a while and, if possible, make a custom weapon for him. But Ginger hears Aesel saying that the 2 dwarves are already leaving. Wald says goodbye and comments that maybe they will meet again someday. The boy wishes Ginger a good trip and emphasizes that he hopes to see her again. Ginger says goodbye to them and soon notices the MC watching her. He wants to know if she is already leaving. Ginger answers that yes, and says that her master is a man entirely devoted to the Philosopher's Stone. Sushi wants to know if she thinks the same way. Ginger becomes intrigued and asks the MC to be clearer. He comments that it seems her interest is not only the Philosopher's Stone, or at least that was what he thought. She feels shy and cannot answer. Sushi says that life there is difficult. Monsters attack every night, and even though they have magic stones, resources are not exactly abundant, besides that they are already short-handed. And that is exactly why the combat power of a single person makes a huge difference. So he emphasizes that the village needs her, since her abilities are directly linked to the life of every person there. Therefore, the MC extends his hand and asks her to stay in the village and join them. She still does not know what to answer, until Dorn appears thanking the MC for everything. Then he says that the preparations are complete and they will already be departing. Ginger feels shy for a brief moment, but calls her master and says that she intends to stay in the village. He looks back and asks if she is serious. Ginger answers that yes. Dorn drops the shield on the ground and asks her to forge a weapon. Ginger becomes confused by this request and tells her master that she did not understand. He points the axe at her and makes it clear that he cannot let a novice roam freely in nature. She is surprised, but agrees with her master's idea. After that, they go to the forge. Sushi wants to know if Ginger needs anything, since he can generate some materials with magic stones. She answers that no and thanks him. And, while she works hard to forge the weapon her master asked for, she makes it clear that she would not be satisfied if she did not do it with her own power. The MC smiles and says that he understands. Therefore, he turns around and leaves her working. A few hours later, Ginger finishes her work and takes the weapon to her master to analyze. Dorn takes the sword from her hand and keeps observing it, but soon returns the weapon and emphasizes that this is not the way he aims for. Then he explains that second-class blacksmiths work looking at the goal and that first-class blacksmiths work looking at the person. Having said that, he looks at Sushi and emphasizes that, if that is the case, this should show where her gaze is fixed. Then he points out that he has his fire and she has hers, and that is why she must remember well not to let her flame go out and to follow her own inner flame within her. Ginger is impressed by her master's words, but the MC asks Dorn if that means she passed. He simply turns around and leaves, asking Sushi to just take care of Ginger. She keeps looking at the sword she forged and thinking about her master's words. Sushi feels happy to know that he gained another new ally and, on top of that, a dwarf artisan. Meanwhile, the old man continues on his path in search of the Philosopher's Stone. Ginger makes a gesture of gratitude to her master, and Sushi comments that, now that they secured an artisan as an ally, they need to strengthen the production base. Leafy gets excited and emphasizes that they will greatly increase the base's level now. 9 days later, the residents are very impressed, as they are seeing the base evolve several levels. At that moment, the village is at level 8. Ginger calls the MC and asks if this is the power of the magic stone, since it is the first time she has seen it. Sushi answers that yes, and comments that, this time, the outer walls and the workshop were renovated, and as soon as they enter the workshop, the place is completely refurbished and spotless. While Ginger is amazed, the MC says that it is the place reserved for her, and that she should use it however she wants. The artisan goes from one side to the other, observing and testing the place, and thanks the MC very much, saying that there are so many things she wants to try immediately. Sushi is happy to see that she is excited, and as he steps outside the workshop, he hears Leafy calling him. The MC comments that having Ginger on his side was a great victory, and that, considering the battles he has already witnessed, the equipment they had there was a bit unreliable. Then he explains that the amount of resources the magic stone can store also increased thanks to the base leveling up, but that he would like to stockpile mana in the next battles. Having said that, he emphasizes that now that the base's level has risen, as soon as the mana reaches a specific amount, a certain person will appear. The little fairy is surprised to learn that the MC is already thinking about yet another new ally. Meanwhile, he reflects that after making Ginger his ally, they constantly overcame the subsequent attacks, and that the quality of their weapons and armor improved considerably, and the burden on the members who went into battle decreased, since they have Ginger acting as support during combat. Because in the world of Last, where death is the end, securing supplies is crucial. However, he keeps in mind that there are less than 3 days left until the second monster stampede, and therefore, he knows he needs to hurry and reinforce the defenses. A few days later, the residents are gathered in the center of the base. Wald wants to know what the hell that pile of dirt he is seeing is. Ginger says it is a golem, and explains that it is a humanoid moved by magic that moves on its own. Sushi reflects that golems are support items that can participate in battle alongside NPCs, and that they can perform the same role as the character defined as their master. So, if the master is a swordsman, the golem can use a sword. If the master is an archer, it can use a bow. since their attributes are a degraded version of the master's. But even so, they are useful to complete the number of units. Then Ginger laughs and explains that she can only move the golems because they are at the source of the magic stone, and besides that, she always wanted to try making one. Anemona becomes intrigued as she watches the golem using a sword and shield, and immediately wants to know if that thing can really fight. Ginger answers that yes, and explains that if the hunter defines a master, the golem can fight in the same style as its master, although its attributes are lower. A resident, noticing a golem wearing an apron and holding a broom, wants to know if those things can help with household chores. The artisan makes it clear that she can assign tasks such as cleaning or laundry to the golems, and anything that involves physical movement. The residents are impressed by this creation and begin to speculate around it. Then one of the golems moves, and Ginger becomes intrigued since she knows that for the golems to react the way they are, there must be another mother source nearby, until someone shouts warning that someone is approaching the base. Everyone quickly goes to the entrance of the base and watches the person walking out of the middle of the forest, and it does not take long for that person to reach the entrance. The blonde arrives confidently and shouts that she challenges the leader of the village to a duel. She is the daughter of the Queen of the White Forest, Ulyssia Weiswald. Everyone at the base cannot believe the girl's audacity. Then the MC comments to Leafy that, apparently, the conditions for the spawn have been met. Therefore, he calls out to Ulyssia and says that for now, he is the leader of the base. She observes the MC carefully and asks if he really is the leader. Then she makes it clear that if he loses the duel, she will become the leader of the place. Having said that, she tells the MC not to worry, because she will ensure the village's development. Sushi says he understands, but wants to know what will happen if she loses. Ulyssia laughs and replies that it is practically impossible, but in the worst-case scenario, if she loses, she will do anything he wants. Sushi becomes serious and asks if she is sure about that, because he thinks she might go back on her word afterward. The blonde points her finger at the MC and makes it clear that, as the daughter of Lorea, Queen of the White Forest, she, Ulyssia Weiswald, will never go back on her word. Sushi and Leafy laugh at the blonde's declaration, but then the MC gets ready and accepts the duel. They both stare at each other, and the system informs that the MC's mission now is to win the duel against a mage. Some people from the village go to the watchtower to watch from a good spot, and others stay at a distance so they are not caught in the crossfire. Sylvan wants to know who the person who just arrived is. Ginger says that Ulyssia is from the Ida tribe of the White Forest, an isolated place like an elven territory, and that the elves from there rarely leave. Wald laughs and says that the elf mentions something about becoming the village chief, but wants to know if it is not easier to make the strongest the leader. Then, while some residents distribute food to the people, Ulyssia draws her magic wand and makes it clear to the MC that whenever he wants to start the duel, he can begin. Sushi takes a coin and says they will start the moment the coin hits the ground. Having said that, he throws the coin into the air, and as soon as it falls to the ground, the blonde prepares to make her first move and activates her Wind Slash ability. Sushi dodges the attack at the last instant. Wald is impressed and immediately wants to know what the blonde used. Ginger explains that it was an attack spell and that apparently the elf is skilled. Assel comments that he could not even see the attack. Ulyssia tells the MC that he has good instincts. Having said that, while launching several Wind Slash attacks, she asks how long he thinks he can endure. Sushi moves from side to side to avoid being hit by the attacks, and reflects that he knows the elf is a character who eliminates a person on the first encounter, since she has a visual confirmation of overwhelming wind magic, and that, without knowing the strategy, the person is completely defenseless. Besides that she appears early, and most beginners lose to her and cannot recruit her. However, he knows that this time he is her opponent, so he charges forward. Ulyssia is surprised to see that he is advancing instead of retreating and tries to hit him. Sushi blocks and reflects that beginner wind magic has predictable trajectories based on the movement of the wand. She is quite surprised to see that he managed to block her attack easily. As he advances once more, Sushi keeps in mind that her power has clear limits, and that it may even work on monsters without armor. But the iron shield forged by Ginger will not be cut. Ulyssia activates her power once again, and jumps into the air. In this way, she manages to dodge the MC's sword slash. she keeps dodging the attacks while flying. The village residents are surprised to see that she can fly and immediately comment that they also wanted to fly. The blonde prepares her wind dance ability, which begins to take the shape of a whirlwind. Sushi thinks that this is a higher level wind spell, and that if a test character is hit by it, it will be fatal. Ulysses comments that if the MC continues advancing head-on, he will become an easy target, but he activates an item beforehand. The blonde does not care and shouts for him to know his place. Having said that, she unleashes her overwhelming ability. However, nothing happens, and she ends up quite astonished at what she is seeing, since the MC is spinning something in his hand. She tries to do something before he does anything, but it is too late. Sushi throws what he was spinning in her direction. Ulysses is caught by the foot by a weighted rope and is immediately pulled hard to the ground. She becomes confused about what just happened and looks directly at her feet, realizing that she is tied to some weights. Sushi takes advantage of the opportunity, goes up to her and points his sword. Then he apologizes and comments that the level of the magic stone is still very low, since there was not enough mana there for her to release higher level spells. Therefore, he emphasizes that, apparently, it seems he won the duel. She becomes nervous and says that she ended up losing to someone who does not even use magic. But when she sees the MC's expression indicating that now she will do everything he orders, Ulysses is completely in shock. Later, she is helping to gather the debris that broke during the battle and saying that she had said she would accompany him, but wants to know why she has to help clean up the place. Sushi makes it clear that she was the one who broke things, and that, therefore, she is the one who must clean. And while she keeps stacking things with her wand, Sushi watches the people working hard together with the golems. Leafy comments to her creator that it is good that the mage has also joined them. He watches the elf grumbling and replies that yes, but they will test the new tactics that night during the battle. After that, the MC goes to the middle of the forest together with Ulysses, Ginger, and the golems. He is always attentive to the blonde's movements, until he calls the little fairy and asks if she can somehow find out what is happening in the real world. She tries to check, but soon replies that she cannot, and says that besides the change of the game master's name, there does not seem to be any change in last. Sushi comments that there are parts of the game's flow that differ from the original, so he wants to know whether it is because he is there in the world of last, or if there is another reason, because he fears that in this way, he will not get anywhere. Then he concludes that he needs to reach level 100 as quickly as possible. Leafy becomes confused and asks him to be clearer. The MC explains that if he reaches level 100, he will be able to enter the tower. Leafy tinkers with the system and comments that apparently this tower was added in the last update. Sushi comments that even with developer mode, there is a limit to what he can do in normal gameplay mode, and that, to go beyond that, he will need the power of the tower. Then, he hears the elf calling him. She wants to know how long they will continue walking deeper into the forest. The MC replies that until the monsters appear. Then he thinks that he wants to test magic and the golems before that night's battle, which is precisely why they went to the forest. However, he decides to ask how good Ulysses is with magic. The blonde starts bragging, saying that if it is wind magic, she can use anything, as well as other types too. But she soon changes her expression when she hears the MC wanting to know how much she can use where they are. Ulysses becomes embarrassed and says that she thinks she can use some offensive wind spells and some movement support magic, but starts shouting that it is not her fault, since the magic stones there are bad and the terrain has little mana, and that if those were real conditions, she could certainly do more. The MC points out that he is not blaming her, and explains that she still needs to know exactly what she can use at the moment. Having said that, he emphasizes that if the maneuver she used earlier had been in a real fight, she could have been eliminated. The elf does not like hearing that very much, and sulking, comments that she knows that very well. Then Ginger wants to know if the MC intends to use the golems with the elf. He answers that yes, but emphasizes that at the moment there is no one else who can use magic, and that if they increase magical power with the golems, they will have more tactical options. Therefore, he says that if he defines Ulysses as the master of the golems, they will act as her subordinates, and even if the golems are not as strong as she is, they will still be able to use magic. Having said that, He points to the golems and asks the blonde to pour her magical power into the creatures and make sure they recognize her as their master. Ulysses channels some of her power into one of the golems, and a strong glow occurs. Ginger is impressed by what she is seeing and comments that the blonde can now send commands to the golems just by imagining them. Ulysses grabs her wand, concentrates, activates her levitation power, and then the golems begin to levitate as well, just like their master is doing. Sushi asks the elf to make the golems attack the guys ahead, but tells her to pay attention. Ulysses turns to see which guys the MC is talking about and ends up seeing several hunter rabbits who at the moment all look super cute. She laughs and says that is fine, since the creatures ahead do not belong to her beloved forest. The hunter rabbits, as soon as they notice the blonde's hostility, immediately transform and charge forward. Ulysses activates her wind slash magic, and as soon as she casts it on the creatures, the golems replicate the same movement. The hunter rabbits are hit by several attacks. Ulysses gets excited and runs after the creatures together with the golems, and as she gets a little closer, she orders the golems to eliminate the creatures at once. The golems and the elf attack simultaneously. Some rabbits are eliminated and others flee in fear. The blonde decides not to chase them and soon wants to know what the MC thought of her performance. He makes it clear that the golems' abilities are proportional to their master, and that, therefore, she should not neglect her training. Ulysses does not like hearing that, takes a deep breath, and says that she had already said she understood. Sushi comments that he thinks it is good that she really understood, because they will need to use this in a real fight. Meanwhile, in the real world, Wataru is furious, since things are still not going as planned, and apparently he will need to take a more aggressive action. He says this while watching the MC inside the game. Back inside the game, it is already night, and the system informs that the MC needs to survive one more night. Now, he has one more ally and some golems to help defend the base. Sushi warns everyone that the monsters are approaching and that everyone should follow the plan. That said, he calls for Ulysses and makes it clear that her movements will be the key to success. She replies that she knows and tells the MC to relax. Wald shouts that the monsters have arrived. The goblins start entering the base, and this time, they are equipped with swords and shields, until a larger goblin appears behind the others and lets out a roar, which makes the other goblins excited for battle. The MC realizes that the creatures have started fighting in an organized manner and that as the base level increases, apparently the enemy tactics become more and more advanced. Then, he looks at Anemona and concludes that they need to raise their own tactics to the next stage as well. The huntress orders the archers to fire their arrows, and while the goblins are being hit, the MC thinks that first they broke the enemy line formation with long-range attacks, and then it is Ulysses' turn, as she advances at high speed along with the golems, and wherever they pass, the goblins are struck without knowing what hit them. Sushi knows that with her high attack power and fast movement, Ulysses' magic unit functions like cavalry and can also cut through and split enemy groups. Next, the MC's group advances to the front of the battle. Ulysses heads to the left, and Wald and the others go to the right. The MC soon enters the battle and thinks that they will delay a group of goblins with arrows to immobilize them. And, meanwhile, Ulysses and the golems cause chaos in another part of the battlefield. Sushi keeps in mind that while the ground squad wears down the other group, Ulysses, who is the key piece this time, has her fun, while the goblins are worried about the ground troops. Sushi, realizing that the plan is going as intended, reflects that in this way they can locally cancel out the creature's numerical advantage. The blonde continues taking down several goblins at once, until the MC shouts, telling Wald to finish things there quickly and go after the goblin that seems to be the leader of the creatures. He defeats the weak goblin and comments that he did not even need to say it. Being so, he gets excited and says that the big one is his. That said, he rushes toward the goblin that appears to be the leader of the lesser goblins. However, Ulysses appears shouting, telling Wald to get out of her way. He is surprised by the elf's sudden appearance, and she charges through, striking the creatures. Wald has to jump to the side so he is not hit as well. Sushi is surprised by Ulysses' attitude. Wald, on the other hand, gets nervous and shouts, wanting to know what the blonde thinks she is doing. He responds by shouting that he was the one who stepped in front of her. At that moment, a creature appears in front of Wald. and the MC shouts, telling him to pay attention. Wald manages to block the attack at the last second, but is heavily pressured by the creature's strength. Sushi tells Wald to hold the goblin the way he is doing, that he is already arriving. Being so, with a quick movement, the MC delivers a slash to the creature. Wald lets go of the goblin and shouts, saying that now it is his turn. Then he drives his sword into the goblin, who barely has time to defend himself and soon falls hard to the ground. The goblins realize that their leader has just been eliminated. Sushi comments that this is great and orders everyone to finish this once and for all, and they all move together to end the battle. A few hours later, the villagers manage to defeat all the creatures, and the system announces that the mission to survive one more night has been completed. Wald wastes no time and immediately goes to Ulysses and shouts, wanting to know what she has in her head. Leafy appears and says that apparently there are still things to improve in the group's coordination. Sushi agrees and comments that he knows that, in fact, Ulysses is a great asset in battle, but seeing Wald and her arguing, he emphasizes that they need to further refine their group tactics for the second wave and strengthen the base as well. The next day, the base is once again being upgraded, and as soon as it is ready, the base reaches level 10. Wald looks around and comments that it has become even bigger again. Ulysses comments that it does not reach the level of elven creation magic, but that the power of the magic stone there is not bad at all either. Sushi stays at a distance observing the surroundings, and Leafy says that they managed to level up in time. Sushi agrees, but points out that it was by a very small margin, since he has in mind that wanting to increase the level before the second wave, they invested all their knowledge and effort into gathering resources. And that, thanks to people like Anemona and Ulysses, whom he normally would not be able to recruit in a regular match, they managed to gather the maximum amount. Leafy comments that now that the base has reached level 10, something will happen. Sushi agrees and says that this means more NPCs will be added. Being so, the MC shouts for everyone to clear the square because more players are about to arrive. That said, a glow appears in the sky, and soon a beam of light descends into the center of the village. Everyone watches attentively, and from the light, more people come out to help in the village. Sushi approaches them and comments that he is sure they are confused. Then he asks them to let him explain the situation to everyone. And after some time explaining the situation, one of the people shouts, saying that the MC is joking since they were dragged there for no reason and forced to fight monsters. Next, a woman asks the MC to send them back. Sushi comments that he is very sorry and makes it clear that there is no way to send them back. Sylvan approaches, saying that even so, they have houses and food there, and that, for now, living there is the only real option. The guy from before keeps shouting, wanting to know what the old man is talking about, and then points his finger at the MC and says that he was the one who kidnapped everyone there. At that moment, Wald draws everyone's attention and comments that he has seen this type of reaction somewhere before, but as he tries to speak, he realizes he is not good at talking to people and bursts into laughter. The people soon want to know who the hell he is and ask Wald to stay out of it. Hearing that is a shock to Wald, and he immediately becomes serious and makes it clear that they tried to be kind. And, as he tries to charge at the new residents, two people hold Wald back so he does not mess things up. The other villagers are stunned by the shouting happening there, until Anemona asks if they should deal with that night's attack only with the current members. Sushi answers no, and emphasizes that the scale of the attack will only increase, and that it will be difficult unless they increase their numbers as well. The Huntress watches the furious Wald and thinks that if they do not reach a consensus, she believes things may get out of control. The MC just takes a deep breath, thinking that he needs to resolve this as quickly as possible. A few hours later, the women of the base continue working and talking. In the workshop, Ginger is showing the new residents how the artisan craft works. Azel is watching the new children play. The new residents who can fight are gathered at the training field. Sushi shouts, warning that the monsters will not have mercy on them for being new. That said, he emphasizes that if they do not want to be eliminated, they must prepare properly. The guy from before, who was upset about being taken there by force, just keeps observing things without saying anything. Later, dinner is being served and several people are in the dining hall. The new residents are talking and eating, while the old residents are talking about what they will do later. Sylvan tries to get a little more drink, but the woman refuses to give him more, and the new residents notice this. And the woman and the guy from before do not like it. Sushi notices this and thinks that unfortunately, they will be going into battle still carrying so many uncertainties. Then he considers that perhaps that night's fight might really be difficult, and it does not take long for the 12th day of surviving the night to arrive. While Wald and the others fight, one of the new residents trembles in fear of getting involved in the battle. Wald notices this and shouts, wanting to know what the guy is doing, because he needs to fight harder and push forward so he is not forced back. Being so, he gathers his courage and starts fighting. His partner eliminates a goblin, and the MC comments that he is doing well, but asks him to stay calm and observe his surroundings. Next, Sushi watches Aesel helping his rookie partner and thinks that he added one new NPC to each squad and assigned the rest to base defense, since he knows that flooding the front lines with unreliable members would only bring the risk of a total collapse. Meanwhile, in the center of the base, Leafy is observing the new residents standing around until a guy asks what they are doing and tells them to take their positions quickly. However, the new residents do not care at all and just walk away. Leafy notices this and does not like it one bit. Back in the battle, the archers in the watchtower are trying to keep the surrounding goblins at bay. The MC thinks that the tactics from the last battle should work that night as well. At that moment, Ulyssia flies in with the golems and comments that now it is her turn, and they go out, causing quite a mess on the battlefield. The blonde laughs and says that goblins never learn. The MC, seeing that the elf has opened a path, shouts for everyone to keep advancing. While the older residents defeat some goblins, the new residents begin to struggle to move forward, but Ulyssia appears shouting that it is time to open the way again. Sushi replies that it is fine, since they are managing in that area. The elf once again eliminates several goblins at once, thus opening another gap in the front line. She laughs and says she is already ready for the next stage and once again goes out carving a path through the battlefield, until a red light points from the center of the forest and leaves the blonde quite startled. A goblin appears from the middle of the forest, charging straight at her. Ulyssia cannot dodge and ends up being struck and thrown hard to the ground. More goblins begin to emerge from the forest. The blonde grabs her wand and says she would never have imagined being ambushed by a bunch of inferior beings. Sushi is intrigued by this and shouts that it is a second wave. Wald asks what they are going to do. The MC replies that he will help the elf since she is at a numerical disadvantage and close combat is not her strong point. That said, both of them run to help her. However, several goblins block the path, intending to stop them from passing. Wald, while fighting a goblin, wants to know what the hell happened, since it almost seems like the creatures suddenly gained more stamina. Sushi looks to the side when he hears a rookie scream after being struck. Then he thinks that the situation has become more difficult because the enemy pressure is too much for the new recruits to handle. And, watching Ulyssia struggle, he questions why there was an ambush, since he knows that goblins should not use such tactics on day 12. At that moment, the recruit who was attacked begins to tremble in fear and soon runs away, fleeing the battlefield and shouting that he does not want to be eliminated. Next, 2 more recruits run away as well, afraid of being eliminated. Sushi fears that at this rate, the front line will collapse and the goblins will invade the base. From atop the wall, one of the new residents is watching what is happening around and sees the other 2 recruits fleeing the battle in desperation. Being so, he looks at the other residents who arrived with him and nods, saying that the time has come. Meanwhile, Ulyssia does not give up fighting and casts her Windblade skill, until, if it were not for a golem defending her, she would have been struck from the side without even noticing. Then, she becomes nervous, since she is being overwhelmed. Leafy runs to her creator and says that a huge problem has happened, since some of the new NPCs who arrived have fled the base. The MC becomes nervous, since besides having difficulties on the front line, now this new problem has arisen. And seeing the others struggling and visibly tired, Sushi tells Leafy to initiate the combat AI switch, which leaves her quite surprised and wanting to know if her creator is sure. He replies that he knows it is a huge risk, but emphasizes that as things are getting complicated, he needs to end this quickly. Being so, the MC shouts for Wald and Asel to gather everyone around him. Wald asks if it is really necessary, but Azul calls him and says they need to do it quickly. Being so, after calling the others, they run to join the MC. Sushi and his partner are fighting, and after eliminating the goblins there, the MC looks to the side and says that at the current pace he thinks the battle line will collapse. That said, he says he will strengthen all of them with the power of the magic stone. Azul is surprised and asks if the MC can really do that, and Wald shouts that if he could do that, he should have done it from the beginning. Sushi says there is a price, since it places a heavy burden on the body, and that because of that, he cannot use it for long, but that if they do not hold their ground there, they will have no hope of winning. Wald makes it clear that if they do not win, they will be doomed anyway, so he tells the MC to just do it. Being so, Sushi tells them to turn their backs, and the combat AI selection system asks the MC to choose. He thinks that since he is logged in through developer mode, he can change the AI that controls the NPC's movements to something more powerful. However, he keeps in mind that altering the combat AI overloads the characters, and that in the worst-case scenario, the NPC's memory may be corrupted, leading to their elimination. So he knows that this is a double-edged sword that he cannot use all the time. And as soon as he selects the exceed option, he tells everyone that it is done. Azul is impressed, and Wald comments that he feels immense power running through him. The MC makes it clear that this will not last long, and that they need to meet up with Ulysses quickly. While running, Azul notices something, since he is seeing that apparently the enemies seem much slower. And while they fight to open a path to reach the elf, Wald comments that it is too easy and asks for more goblins to appear. Where Ulysses is, she is having to retreat while fighting several goblins at the same time. However, she realizes that she is heading straight toward where there are even more goblins and becomes worried since she thinks she will not be able to move in time. The goblins shout and charge at her, but one of the creatures is struck directly by a sword slash. The elf notices that reinforcements have just arrived. Sushi shouts, asking if she is okay. Wald emphasizes that they went there to save her skin. Ulysses crosses her arms and says she did not need help, since she was already going to handle the situation alone, until suddenly, a guy drops to his knees on the ground, and Wald immediately turns around asking what is happening. The guy starts coughing up some blood, and Azul also becomes worried, asking if he is okay. Sushi says that it is the price of the strengthening magic and that they will not last much longer either. Then he makes it clear that since they do not have time, they need to defeat the goblin leader as quickly as possible. That said, the MC tells the elf to leave the golems on defense and for the others to prepare for the attack. Ulysses activates her wind dance magic, and while she opens a path, the others follow behind, advancing. The elf's attack strikes several goblins at once, and the ground troops advance on the goblins that are scattered. Sushi runs toward a group of goblins and quickly thinks of something, and as he throws the sword, he tells Azul to use it as a step and jump. The boy wastes no time, jumps onto the MC, and while one of the goblins is struck in the foot by the MC's sword, Azul propels himself forward and eliminates the goblin leader. After managing to survive the second goblin horde, everyone is being treated in the center of the base. One of the people is complaining that his body hurts a lot and that he will never do this again. Sushi appears saying that Azul did very well, but wants to know if his body is okay. The boy thanks him, but says he is in a bit of pain, until Leafy appears apologizing to her creator for not having managed to stop the deserters. He comments that there is nothing to be done, but that in any case he wants to know if she knows where they went. The fairy says that apparently it seems they are trying to leave the forest. Sushi takes a deep breath and comments that the monsters will block them and they will return soon. Next, he looks at the people being treated and comments that there are 2 days left until the next wave and that they need to build a stronger defense system. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest where the deserters are, the one responsible for the rebellion comments that the food has been secured and that he thinks it should last until they leave the forest. And as they continue walking deeper into the forest, a creature watches them from the top of a tree.